This is the Cairo Salesforce community. The رابع meeting. This is the fourth meeting at Salesforce group. معانا النهارده 2 sessions. أحمد كشك هيتكلم عن low code best practices. يعني حاجات زي using custom settings and custom metadata. في session هيكون معانا آدم أولشانسكي. هيتكلم عن components سواء هي الأورا أو اللي هي Lightning Web Components الجديدة يعني. Actually السيشن آدم هتبقى in English بس but this session يعني will be in Arabic. وهيكون بس في تغيير كده بسيط إن آدم's session it will start at 8:30 T+2 يعني اللي هو التايمينج بتاع كايرو. يبقى فيه زي 10 minutes break كده between يعني من ل 8:30 إن شاء الله. فعايزين نبدأ على طول عشان نلتزم يعني. اتفضل يا كشك.
Okay. I think we have some non-speakers participants, if I'm not mistaken. So I believe it will be good full session in Arabic, in English, sorry.
Okay.
The session is recorded so that there be a benefit for all as well for the recording in LinkedIn. So let's get started. All right, so I believe you can see my screen right now. So let's get started. This is our fourth meetup. So we have founded this group in 2017, but we had some break, and now this is the fourth meetup this year, thanks to Farah, of course, and the organization and so on. Today's session is about low code best practices. I am Ahmed Keshk, Salesforce technical architect working in a Salesforce partner called Entity Data. I have almost around 11 years or 12 years in CRM. Most of them I started mainly with Siebel, and now I have started working with Salesforce in 2015. So this is a little bit about me. And let's get started about today's session. As Farah said, it's about low code best practices, and mainly we're gonna focus on the custom metadata, the custom settings, custom permissions, and what is the difference between these options, and what is the best practices for using such configurations. So our session is mainly about the Salesforce admin, the awesome role. As a Salesforce admin, most of the time we are using point and click in order to fulfill the requirements, control the access to the Salesforce org, and so on. However, sometimes to fulfill these requirements, it might go cumbersome, especially if we have some complex requirement, and therefore I'm going to share with you 3 scenarios. And with these 3 scenarios, we're going to share the best practices and the special tool that you can use in order to apply this best practice. So what you should expect in this session. Mainly, we try always to have a kind of different level of sessions. So in the previous meetup, we had 3 sessions, beginners, intermediate, and advanced level. In today's meetup, we have 2 sessions only. So this is kind of beginners, intermediate level, and Adam will take us to the advanced level, talking about Lightning Web Component and so on. So who should be interested for this session today? Admins in specific, of course, and developers, as we're gonna talk about some best practices of how we could use custom permission, custom settings, and custom metadata in the code, in the Apex code as well. The session requires prior understanding to Salesforce profiles, permission sets, field level security. So if you are watching this recording as a recording, make sure that stop this now and make sure that you understand these concepts first, and then continue watching this this video. Or if you are listening to us right now live, I'm going to illustrate the concept a little bit as a refresher, or for anybody who is new to Salesforce. So we're gonna, in a nutshell, talk about profiles and permission sets and what is used about. So let's get started. Profiles. Profiles defines the user access to objects and data. So this is your first level that you can use in order to control user access for your org. Profiles control what you can see in terms of apps on Salesforce, tabs, record types, page layouts, and fields, and so on. And as well, it controls what kind of actions that you can do as a user. So if I can create a new account, create new case, read opportunities, for example, and create opportunities and so on, all these actions, you can control whether the user can do such actions, yes or no. You can control that via the profile. Each user has one profile and one profile only. And out of the box, Salesforce contains some standard profiles that is shipped. You cannot change these profiles, but of course, if you have added custom fields and stuff like that, you can control that in standard profiles. But however, you can take this as a basis and clone these profiles to create your custom profiles that is for your intended purpose. And at the end, we have standards and custom profiles. The profiles, as I said, it controls the CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete operation. And you can do that, specify that for each object, as we can see here. So you can revoke the delete access, for example, from some critical objects. If you need to do so, you can provide edit access for others, or provide a read-only access for other objects. All that you can control it from the profiles, of course, and this is how you can do so. Not only, but also you can specify in the profile something what is called field level security. And by field level security, we mean mainly two access types, whether you can read that field or you can edit that field. With this check visible, and this is the list of fields in some objects, you can say it's an account, opportunity, or a custom object. Once you have this field as visible, then as a user, your profile is granting you access to these fields. You can read them. If they are exposed in the page layout, then it will be visible for you in the page, in the UI. However, if the fields are there in the page layout and you don't have the visible flag, it will not be displayed for you and it will be hidden. So this is how multiple users who have the same page layout might have different UI because they don't have the proper access to fields. On the same thing, the read-only flag control whether you can edit that field, yes or no. So if it's read-only, of course, you cannot edit it. So this is all what we want to talk about profiles. But as we said, every user has one profile and one profile only. On the other side, permission sets is another mechanism for access. And it's a little bit, you can say, it provides you with more flexibility, let's say like that. The benefit of permission set is that you can assign to the user multiple permission set. If you have a team and all the team is assigned to one profile, you can pick specific users from that team who need to do additional tasks, have additional responsibilities, and you can create a permission set for them. For example, in this snapshot, here we say, okay, this team in a specific, normally they read, create, and edit leads. However, for some of them, we can grant delete leads and transfer leads if necessary, and we can grant this access via permission set. So it's something additional that you can add on top of profiles. What if the access between the permission set and profile contradict? We always add permission via the permission set. We don't revoke anything. So your basis is the profile, and you add on top permission sets, and you can add multiple permission sets to the same user, and the result is aggregation of the all access granted from the profile and the permission sets. So let's try to see this quickly in a demo. First of all, this is the setup menu in Salesforce, and if you want to check first the profiles, you need to right here in the setup search profiles. It is under the user section. And as you can see, all these records are standard profiles shipped with the application. But these records here is custom profiles that we can change and alter accordingly. Let's check this one, for example, custom sales profile. And here we can find the object settings. I have the list of objects that we have on Salesforce on this org. Let's pick the account, for example. And as you can see, for this profile, it is granted only the read access. However, I can edit that and add multiple other access like create, edit, delete, and so on, or view all and modify all, and so on. And here, this is the field level security that we were talking about the fields that are there in the account object. This is about the profile. What about permission set? But before going to the permission set, let's go to my user record, for example. And this is the global search. Do search for any data record in the org. You can navigate to that easily. So this is my user record. And in the user attributes, you can see here, you have a field called profile. And as I said, you can assign one profile only to the user. However, if we scroll down to the related lists, we can see a list of permission sets that we can assign. So I have granted myself multiple permission sets in addition to the one profile that I do have. And this is the permission set. If we go to the here to the permission set, more or less it is the same like the profile. Let's pick this one. At the end, you can have the same options that we used to have in the profile. And again, you can go to the objects like object settings, and you can change the settings accordingly. So more or less, it's not different than the profile. With that said, we have finished the last, the first part of our presentation, the refresher about the profiles and permission sets and so on. So let's get started with the low-code best practices and the awesome admin, as we said. This is the first scenario that we have today. It's about universal containers, of course. If you passed at least one Salesforce certificate, of course, you're gonna know what's universal container. It's a fictitious company that always Salesforce certification questions refer to it. And we're gonna follow the same approach today. So we are admin, work for universal containers, and we have a business scenario, and let's see how we're going to fulfill this business requirement following the best practices. And let's start with the first scenario that we have. From time to time, my clients ask me for a similar requirement, the key user. What's the key user? As an admin in Universal Container, you need to allow a key user among the team to have a wider and less restrictive access. The key user does not have a different profile. It is something similar to the situation that we had in the permission set. So let's try to assess the following requirements, whether we can fulfill that via the permission set, yes or no. View additional fields. We said that, yes, we can do so via permission set. We can grant the user access to additional fields via a permission set, although his profile does not grant such an access, and all the team have the same profile, one profile. Let's call it the sales team profile. However, I can pick one user, key user, a sales manager, a sales team leader, who can have additional access to additional fields via permission set and field level security in that permission set. So this is something that we can do via permission set. What about edit read-only fields? So we can have some read-only fields in the profile settings. However, we can grant that user a specific permission set to have edit access over these fields, and still this is possible via permission set. So far, so good. The same for delete records. We can do that via the object permission, the CRUD operation that we just saw via permission set. But let's check the other group of requirements. What if I want to bypass a validation rule? For example, I have a discount field on the opportunity, and that discount field should not exceed 30% for the normal sales reps members in that team. However, I want to grant that access to the key user if necessary. You cannot do that via a permission set. Why? You cannot reference the permission set in the validation rule, and even if you can do so, you have multiple permission sets, so it's not possible at the end. The same for running a screen flow. Imagine that we have a screen flow invoked from an action, and we want to limit the access for that action for specific users, and we want to limit that action for that key user. In Salesforce, there is nothing that can do so for actions via permission sets, via profiles, and so on. So this is as well cannot be done via the normal security access mechanisms that we usually work with as admins. All right. Usually, and I saw this in multiple implementations, admins add some checkboxes to the user record. In our use case, or in our scenario, we're going to add a checkbox called key user, and we're going to flag some users that these are the key users. And from the user record, I can reference the user record in the validation rule. From the current running user, I can refer to that record and check whether the key user field is checked or not. And accordingly, I can take a decision whether to bypass the validation rule, yes or not. However, and for the flow invoked from the action, I can do the same thing. I can query the user record, get the value of that field, and accordingly take a decision whether the user is allowed to press that action, yes or no. However, this will be hard to maintain. Changing these values will require updating directly the user records. So if we have 100 users who have this key user checked, and for any reason we need to change that situation, you need to update these 100 users. So it will be hard to maintain. In addition, it is different than the mechanism that we as admins used to. We usually work with profiles, permission sets for granting access, and now we are in a need to go to the user record in order to set that permission, which is not suitable at all. In the future, this will be cumbersome to maintain. Right now, we are talking about one business rule to have a key user. What if in the future we have different types of these key users? So at the end, we will end up with a couple or dozen of checkboxes added to the user record, and we need to maintain that. Definitely, we can say that this is not a best practice that we want to maintain and have as an awesome admin. So what is the best practice to do so? There is a feature in Salesforce which is called custom permissions, and this should be the solution for such a requirement. Custom permissions is something that you can do for any custom access that you want to implement over the platform. Yes, Salesforce have modeled some access privileges in the permission set, in the profile, and you can control that. However, if you want to extend this via something custom you have added, like the validation rules we set, flows, any extra addition thing, you can do so via custom permission. So let's go and demo this feature and see how first it is configured and then how we can do so for a validation rule, bypass it, or for available. Let's go back to Salesforce. And as you can see here from the setup menu, I have already searched for the word permission. And we have here under the custom code section, something called custom permission. Creating custom permission is as easy like that. You just press new and give it a name. I will just call this one. We said that let's create a test record, for example, test fourth meetup, for example, and this is the label. This will be the name as well, and I can give it a description here, of course, or I can, as a best practice as well, you can write here the ticket number that you are working on, so that you have kind of a traceability between the requirements and the configuration. Your colleagues in the future will thank you for that when you leave a comment here or describe why we have added this piece of configuration. Let's continue in this custom permission. When you save that record, now it is as simple as that. Now we have a custom permission on the system. Salesforce as well allow you to build a relationship between the custom permission. So I can say that to grant the user this permission, the user need to have this permission as well first. So you can model something like a dependency between the permission. Any user who have this permission need to have this permission as well, and you can do so via this section. However, I will go with the easy way to demonstrate this. So we have here a test custom permission. What else I do have? I have a couple of permission sets that I have, custom permissions that I have either created. So here I have as well created a grant high discount custom permission and create person account custom permission. Remember our scenario, we want one key user to be able to grant a higher discount and to be able to create a person account via a custom flow or something like that. First of all, let me go back to my user record. Let me just make sure that I don't have these permissions already, so that we can demonstrate how adding this will take an effect. So far so good. I don't have any permissions. That's good. Let's go to the object manager and, or first let's go to the opportunity record. I have, let me go to all opportunities and let's pick an opportunity like this one. If I go to the detailed sections of that opportunity, you can find here a new custom field that I have added. It's called discount. And if I try to edit this discount and give it, okay, I will give this opportunity a 25% discount. I can save that successfully. However, let's try to increase this percent to 40%. I cannot do that because of a validation rule that I was talking about. So let's go to the object manager and check how this is implemented. In the object manager, let's go through, go to the opportunity object. And in the opportunity object, we have here a validation rule that makes sure that discount is always less than 30. Let's edit this validation rule for the folks who is new to Salesforce. This is how simple we implement something like the business rule that you just saw. Here you add a condition to the validation rule that you want to implement, and here you can add the message that you want to be displayed for the user, and all these messages can be translated later on to any language enabled on the system. I can select here where the message should be displayed, either on top of the page or to be displayed near the field. I have configured to do so near the discount field. We said that for the key admin, we want him to bypass this validation rule. And I told you that this is a best practice to use the custom permission set instead of referring to the checkboxes on the user record, because almost custom permission is accessible everywhere in Salesforce. Let's try that. Let's try here to add an AND operator between this condition, and let's try to add another condition. I will press here insert field, and if you scroll here, you'll find something called permission, and here you can have access to the custom permissions that we just configured. I have here grant high discount permission that I have created earlier, and I will press insert. Doing so, it just inserted to me a check whether the current user, the running user, have access to that permission, yes or no. We need that the user who does not, we need this rule to fire only to users who does not have this permission. Therefore, I'm going to add a not function or a not operator to negate that logic. And here we go. Yeah, yes, this is the no. Let's delete that and add the parentheses at the end. Let's check the syntax. No errors found. So far so good. We can save that, and let's check the effect of that. Before doing so, I need to grant myself access to the permission set, and this is something that I have not shown to you yet. I am the system administrator for that for this org, so I can navigate here to profiles, navigate to the next page, to the system administrator profile, and in the profile you will find the section called custom permissions, and in this custom permissions section I can add the permission to the profile. The profile is linked to my user record, therefore I will have as a user this permission. Let's add this grant high discounts permission to myself, and let's add as well this one, create person account. We will see this later on. We were not able to do this operation before, but let me refresh this page and try that now. So let's try to increase this discount to 40%. Save. And now I'm able to do that action thanks to the custom permission, of course. So referring to the custom permission is as easy as that. In any piece of configuration, you have validation rules, workflow rules, process builders, and we're going to see how we can do so in a flow right now. If you attended our last session in the previous meetup, it was about flows. And in this session, we have implemented a flow, and that flow more or less create a person account, and let's say that the flow is invoked from this custom action. The idea behind person account is that it creates an account and it creates a contact record related to it. So let's say that we want to enable this action only for the key user. Just a hypothetical example. Let's see what's behind that action button here. Let's go back to the object manager. Here I will type flows. And for it is this one, create account record. Let me go for the versions and open the previous one. I have already one activated, but I will open the previous one. And let's try to see how we can get access to this custom permission in Flow. To do that, you need to create a new resource. And this resource will be a formula field. Let's give it a name. User can create person account. The data type will be Boolean, of course, true or false at the end. And let's try to insert a resource. If I scroll down, again, exactly like the validation rule. We have here a section called permission. I can click it and I will have a list of permissions that I have. And here we go. We have grant high discounts. I can just select it. And then this Boolean variable will give me true or false whether the current user has access to that custom permission, yes or no. Accordingly, we need to navigate the user to another screen if needed. Let's see how this is configured. I don't want to configure that right now, but if we go to version 2 from the flow and open this, I have already done that. So here you can see I have added a decision point, and in this decision point we have two decisions. Either yes, the user has access to that custom permission, and accordingly it will continue in the normal flow, or otherwise he doesn't have access, and accordingly we're gonna navigate him to such a screen that display to him such an error message. If you recall, I have added that access to my user, so I should be able now to create person account normally, as you can see. What if we try the other way around? Let me go back and revoke that access from the profile. So let me go back to the profiles. The administrator. And here we go, custom permissions. And let's revoke that access. I'm no longer should be able to create a person account. Let's go back and let's try to say to refresh. And the flow just worked as expected. The decision point now navigated me to the error screen saying that, okay, you cannot create a person account, get back to the admin team, and the admin team should provide me with this custom permission. So it is as easy as that. I hope it was clear for you how we can implement such a scenario using custom permissions. Let's go back to the presentation.
I wanted to ask something.
Sure.
The permission set of the create person accounts, is that like a permission set or a custom permission? Because I got lost in the port.
Could you repeat that part? Which part that confused you?
The permission of the create person accounts, is it a permission set or a custom permission?
A custom permission, exactly like the high custom, exactly like the grant high discounts one. So we have here grant high discounts, we have the test one that I just created, and create person account is exactly like grant high discounts, a custom permission.
Okay.
The custom permission, ya Farah, you can add it to a profile, and you can add it to permission set as well. And this is actually the benefit behind it. If you remember the limitation that we have mentioned about the approach of adding checkboxes to the user record, imagine that I have a team, and this team of 100 members, and all of them already have one permission set, and I want to revoke that access from this 100 user. It is as easy as that. I need to revoke that custom permission from the permission set, and it is gone from the 100 user. I don't need to maintain the 100 records in order to revoke that action. And this is the idea behind using custom permissions.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Going back, so the demo is done. For the developer folks, custom permissions is available in Apex as well. So you can refer to whether the current user who is running your Apex class or Apex code trigger, whatever, using this class feature management, and then invoke the static method called check permission, provide here the API name of the custom permission, and then you will have a Boolean variable as well to tell you whether the user have access to that custom permission or not. You can use that to control access to a feature that is implemented via Apex trigger or whatever you have done with Apex. So as well, it's not only for low code, but as well for the codey guys, you can get access to the custom permissions via the code as well. That was the end of scenario number 1. Just let me know if you have questions so far about that business scenario. All right, let's move forward. The second scenario that we have is data import. As a universal container admin, you are planning to import 100,000 of records into Salesforce. You're probably going to do that via data loader, bulk API, ETL tool, or something like that. At the end, you have a huge amount of data that you need to import into Salesforce. And you have the following list of configurations already in your org. You have validation rules, workflow rules, process builders, Apex trigger configured, and you have some outbound integration calls. Let's call it REST callout or SOAP callout, something like that. The scenario asks you to disable these piece of configuration as it affects the performance of the data load, and this is a fact. However, we need to disable that only for the user who is going to load the data. The other users who is already using the org should not be impacted. So first of all, this is really a fact, and it's a best practice for data loading to disable the validation rules, any automation that you have on the org before you load the data, because it consumes from the resources that you have, and you might reach some governor limits while doing so, either CPU limits, or if any of these code is not optimized for bulk operations, of course, it will fail and the whole patch will fail, and this will delay, of course, the data import. So how are we going to fulfill such requirement for universal container? What gonna the awesome admin do in order to fulfill such requirement? The solution will be using something called custom settings. Custom settings is another piece of configuration in Salesforce. It has a unique characteristics. First of all, let's call more or less it's something like the custom object. You create an object and you add some fields to it, but it has some unique features. Let's see that. Let's go to the demonstrate. Custom settings, of course, we need to write here custom settings. We will find it as well under the custom code section. Let's navigate to the custom settings. Let's try to create a new one. And this is as well test fourth meetup. And this should be the object name as well. As I said, it is more or less similar to the custom object, but it has a unique feature, which is you can configure it either of list type or hierarchy type. Ignore the list for now, and let's focus on the hierarchy type because this is the unique feature in this configuration. Let's leave the visibility as public and let's save. Custom settings, because it is hierarchical. First of all, let's add here a couple of fields. You can add some, not all the data types are available, but only this set. Of course, you have other options in custom objects or more options in custom objects. But you can, it is more or less the same like the custom object. At the end, you can create a custom field. I have already one configured. Let me walk you through it. It will be better, and it is related exactly to our scenario. In our scenario, we said, if we go to it quickly, we said that we want to disable the validation rules. We want to be able to disable the workflow rules, process builders, Apex triggers, and outbound integration calls. Here I have created here custom settings called application settings, and the objective of this custom settings is to control that behavior, whether what kind of feature that I'm going to allow in my org, and what others that will be disabled, and for which users. So for that, I have created a couple of fields: enable Apex trigger, outbound calls, process builder, validation rules, and workflow rules. Let's see how we can use that. If I press here manage, it will direct me to the records of that custom settings. It's not like custom objects. You're gonna navigate to that via a tab in Salesforce, because all of these are administration tools, so you can access to it via the setup only. If I press manage, it will navigate me to the records that I already have on that application setting. Do you remember that when I said that custom settings has a unique feature about this being hierarchical? In this part, you can see here the default part, or what we call it the org-wide default, organization defaults for that custom settings. Any user on that sandbox or in that org will have these values, unless I have not overridden that here in this list below. So far I have enabled everything for every user on the system. They can run the validation rule, process builders, Apex triggers, outbound calls, everything. However, let's say that the integration user who gonna perform that data migration, let's see how this is configured. I have revoked everything from the integration user. But this is still the concept. Let's see how we can reference that in anything like the validation rule. So remember our famous validation rule and the opportunity. So let me go back again to the object manager opportunity. And in the opportunity, let's go to the validation rule. In the validation rule, I will open this and press edit. Again, in the condition, it's better to add it here in the beginning, and I will tell you why. And let's add an AND operator, and here try to insert a field. If you scroll this list, you will find that the application setting custom settings is already available in the list from the setup global variable. So from the setup global variable, I can see whether this user have the enable validation rule enabled, yes or no, and let me try to insert that. And why I have added that in the beginning, not at the end, because if this is disabled, I don't want Salesforce to evaluate the other conditions. If this is disabled, and then that's it, exit, do not evaluate anything. This is of course better for the performance as well. So this should be the first that we check in the custom settings whether the validation rules are enabled or not. And I use this as a best practice in all the implementation that I take part of. I do so. So I add this piece of configuration to my validation rules, workflow rules, process builders, flows, Apex triggers, and so on, so that I can control the behavior of my org. It is beneficial for this data load and for other purposes that I'm going to mention as well. So let's back to the custom settings. So this is the idea behind these flags. These flags does not work automatically, but you actually implement that best practice yourself. You add these checkboxes and then reference these checkboxes from the Apex trigger, from the validation rules, and so on to check whether it is enabled or disabled, and accordingly you control your org behavior. By doing so, only the user, the integration user, will be able to load the data. Nothing will prevent him. The logic will not run at all for this integration user. However, for other users on the org will behave normally for them. The same validation rules will run for them, and the automation that we have configured, it will run for them. So this is the benefit from doing so. One awesome thing about custom settings is that it does not work for users only, but it works for profiles as well. So I don't need to mention every single user in order to overwrite the org default, but I can override that for the entire profile. And it's as simple as that. I'll just create another record for a profile and adjust it to whatever I want. Now, the tricky point is we have here the org defaults. We have here a profile like the system administrator. And what if I added my user as well? And let's say I'm going to enable this only. And let's go back to the list. So I have here the system administrator profile, and I have my user, and I have as well the system administrator profile. In the system administrator profile, we have enabled as well the outbound calls. Let me enable something else like validation rule or something like that and revoke this just to have a different access. What will be the right setup for me as a user right now? The right setup is that as a user, this will override everything. This will override what we have in the profile, and it will override what we have in the org default because it is more specific. It is configured only for my user so that it will override what we have for the system administrator, my profile, because I have a specific configuration for my user, and accordingly doing so, I will be able only to run outbound calls and the rest will be disabled for me. I hope this point was clear, and just let me know if it is not.
There is a question, but it's about the custom permissions. Someone is asking whether we could use custom permissions for process builder too, like the flows.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Custom, the custom settings. Sorry, custom permissions. Custom setting. Sorry, I'm confused.
Custom
The
permission.
custom permissions, yes.
Okay.
So this is a test process builder that I just configured, and let's try here to add a criteria. And in this criteria, let's move from this one to a Formula 1. And here you can have a function. It is possible, but you just need to write it yourself. So you have here, you need to do something like that, $sign permission dot, and then you write the permission, the API name of the permission, and then it will work. So it is
Okay.
exactly like the custom settings or anything else. The same is true for custom settings, if I'm not mistaken. It is not, you cannot refer to it from here from the UI. However, you can do so.
I think you can add from system variables, site to function.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you. It is this one, exactly. So from here, you can have, from the setup, this is the one enable. This is the flags that I do have inside the custom settings, at least. What about, yeah, permissions? Here you go. And we have the list that we just created, grant high discounts, person account, and fourth meetup. So yes, it is possible, as you just saw.
I wanted to ask about, but not custom permissions. I wanted to ask about custom settings. You said that they are similar to custom objects. I didn't get that. I didn't see the similarity between custom settings and custom objects. And also, while you were like adding the permission, I didn't see the part where I say like I'm gonna add this data, for example, in this specific object. You get what I mean?
Yeah. All right. To answer the second part first, because it is easier, you drill down from here from setup, custom settings, drill down on the custom setting object that you have created, and here you have a manage button. In the manage button, you will find right away the records that you can set. So by default, you have one record here for default organization. It is one record per org. For this custom setting, you cannot add more because it is hierarchical. The hierarchical, it is not a table that you create. It is just one record for the org. However, you can override that here in this section for a profile or a user. Why I said it is like custom object, because at the end you define an object, you give it a name, an API name, and you define here the custom fields. So this is the part of similarities between it and the custom object, and especially the list type. So if you configure this settings to a list, it will be more or less exactly like the custom object, but I will postpone talking about list custom settings because it is similar somehow to the custom metadata.
Okay, so if I have a user, let's say your user, for example, that that has everything disabled, workflow rules, validation rules, okay, and then I'm adding some data or I don't know from where this is the source, but I'm adding some data. Where would this data reside in Salesforce? Is it will be
You're gonna load them. You're gonna load them in the normal objects. Remember the opportunity. We have here a validation rule that we will be able to disable it. You're going to load opportunities from whatever other previous CRM, old CRM, and now your customer is moving towards Salesforce, and therefore they want to load that massive amount of data, hundreds of thousand records. But the custom settings is controlling whether the validation rule is enabled or disabled for all other objects that you have here in the object manager, account, opportunity, leads, and so on. So the data load go towards the custom objects and standard objects that you have in Salesforce, but the custom settings control what kind of behavior enabled to which users.
Okay, that's great.
All right, perfect. Let's move forward because we don't have that much time left. Again, cookies. Custom settings can be referenced in Apex, and with such settings or such line of code, you will be able to retrieve the default configuration of that custom settings, and accordingly you can check whether these are enabled or not. So most probably you will need such a line of code in order to enable and disable your Apex triggers. So as a best practice, I always add this as the first line of my Apex triggers, and I do not execute the trigger handlers and trigger helpers if the trigger option is not enabled in the application settings and so on. And I do that as well for other configurations like workflows, process builders, and so on. Doing so, it gives you more control over your configurations on the environment. I said that it is beneficial for this data load scenario because it's not practical that you're gonna deactivate all these configurations just for the sake of the data migration. And as well, doing so will affect other users. If you recall in the scenario, it was a requirement that we do not disable this feature for other users. With that said, we have reached here the end of scenario number 2. Let me know if you have any questions so far before we move to the third and last section.
So you write this code or this custom settings and all your validation rules or and all the workflows, process builders to have to control it using one click. Okay.
Yes, yes, Amr, I do that myself. It's a best practice, as I said. There is nothing that force you to do such an approach. But as you saw the best practice, the scenario, we have a situation, and in that situation, we need to deal with it. I am going to load a huge amount of data, and this kind of configuration is slowing down the data migration, and therefore this is a best practice. Always disable such automation tool in a way or another. Of course, you can disable them via the administration part. You disable all the workflows, disable the validation rules, and then you activate them after your data load. We do so in greenfield implementation, but if you are adding records to an active Salesforce org, this is not feasible, of course, and therefore you need such mechanism in order to be able to enable, disable them. And it is something that you do it yourself.
Thanks, thanks.
All right, perfect. Moving forward, the third scenario. Do you remember when you start writing some code back in the university, whenever you have somehow you are modeling a math equation or something like that, and you have in that math equation some constants, we used not to hard code that in the code, and we used to get these values from properties files or global constant variables or something like that. As well, in enterprise application, this is still valid. For example, when you have a business rule, let's imagine that you have a VAT, the VAT tax, and you want to model that while creating code, and you want to calculate the VAT tax in that code. The VAT percent will not be hard-coded in your configuration. It will be stored somewhere common for all configurations, so that when you change that percentage, it is changed everywhere in your Salesforce org. We call this something like business rules global settings. You always need to do so to have something that control the behavior of your code. And let's check this scenario. This time we don't have universal containers, but we have another company called Universal Co-working Spaces. It's a company that sell the facilities or furniture and equipment for co-working space. And you, as an admin in that company, just finished a meeting with the sales manager, and he wants to enable his sales team to create opportunities based on templates. What does that mean? Most of the time, they sell two kinds of product bundles, either co-working space basics, furniture I mean, or co-working space basic conferencing tools for conferencing and so on. And they don't want the sales rep to waste time picking these products and adding them to the opportunities. However, he wants them to choose from a template, and according to the template chosen, the opportunity is created and the product is added on top of that opportunity. So this is the next statement. The template will define the opportunity stage and the products to be added to the opportunity. What is the best way to handle that? So this is our scenario, and let's see how we can fulfill this, of course, with the best practices. Opportunity templates that is mentioned in the requirement, we can model this by two tables. The first table is something that mentioned the template name and mentioned the corresponding opportunity stage that we want to create the opportunity with that stage. And there are some related products to the template. So for the basic furniture, we have 3 products associated to it. For the basic conferencing, we have 2 products associated to it. Let's see how we can model something like that in the next tool that we're going to use, which is custom metadata. So let's demo that, but I will go back to this slide so that we can toggle to it and show you how we can configure this. Let's go back to the setup, and I don't need the custom settings anymore. We can change this to metadata. So custom metadata. Custom metadata, something like custom settings. And actually, this is the new recommended approach from Salesforce. If you go back and try to configure a custom settings, and if I press new, you will find this step to ask you to use metadata instead. Salesforce only recommend using custom settings if you are going for the hierarchical type. And that's why I said I will not illustrate the list option, because this is not anymore best practice from Salesforce, and Salesforce wants us to move from custom settings into custom metadata. And therefore, custom metadata. So more or less, it is like custom settings. More or less, it is like custom object. And with that said, let's try to configure the first part, and let's give it any test name like table 1, for example. Let's call this one table 1 and this part table 2. So I will have a custom metadata. I will name this table 1, table 1 as well. And here you can control the visibility of that custom metadata. whether it is visible via API and setup, or only visible with the same namespace, or visible in a managed package. These options are more related to the ISVs that launch apps to the app exchange, and accordingly they control the visibility of that custom metadata among their configuration shift. Whether you as an admin, when you install the app, will be able to see and change that custom metadata or not, but this is a different story. You can totally ignore it right now. Table 1, I just saved that. More or less, as I said, it is like a custom object. We can here define custom fields. It do have validation rules. Custom settings, we didn't have that. It do have page layout as well. In custom settings, we didn't used to have such things. So let's go ahead and create a custom field. It will be a text box, and let's call it opportunity stage. For the length, I will give it 100, nothing more than that. It tells me that it will be added to the page layout. So far, so good. Save that. Let's try to create another custom metadata for table number 2 this time. I have not created a name field because, of course, it's like custom object. It is already included in the custom object. We do have a name field. So I will call the second object table 2. Table 2. Save. And here I will create a product a field to hold the product, and it will be a text field. Next, it will hold the product name, and I will make it a little bit longer, 200. And this time I will say save and new, because we do need another field. We need a relationship field to model this relationship between the two tables. And with that, I'm going to select this option, metadata relationship. This option allows you to relate two custom metadata objects together. Not only, we can illustrate that later. You can choose additional options, but I don't want to confuse you now. Let's complete our scenario. And I'm going to relate table 2 with table 1 and press next. Next and save. Let's go back to table number 1 and press manage records and press new. So I can give it a name here. So I will call this the basic furniture template. And the opportunity stage, I will, okay, it needs to be prospecting. And I'm going to save. Here you can see a related list to that record from table 2. However, I cannot add any record here directly. I need to go back to table 2 and press manage records, press new, and let's add that record here. It's meetings table. So, so this is furniture table, and the product name is meeting table. And from the relation, I'm going to pick the basic furniture so that I relate table 2 record with basic furniture record, exactly like here it is done. Press save. I will go to the table 1 record by drilling down to here, and here you can see, okay, the parent record and the child record related to it. So we have modeled a piece of that configuration in this custom metadata objects that we have. I have already created a flow to model that, and I want to show you how we're going to read that configuration that is going to affect the piece of functionality that that we have already configured. The idea of these two tables or two custom metadata objects is that we can add multiple opportunity templates as much as needed. Here, we just need to configure 2 templates, but in the future, the sales team can add multiple templates and change this set up a little bit, add more products, remove more products, and so on. And you can control that easily here from the custom metadata. If I go to the opportunity, as I said, I have already configured this. Let me test it. So I have here an action. It's called select opportunity template. This action invokes a flow. In this flow, we query the metadata records that we just configured, and we will select one of these. Let's say that I'm going to select the basic furniture, press next. I'm going to give it an opportunity name. I will call it test metadata fourth meetup. And one of the required fields in the opportunity is the close date. We need to give it a close date, and the stage as well is required, but the stage will be picked from the template. If you remember, we said that whenever we select this template, the opportunity stage will need to be prospecting. I'll press next. And we just have the opportunity created. And here we go. This is our opportunity. Let's check its details. The stage is prospecting. The close date is set. This is the opportunity name. And most importantly, the products are added to the opportunity. And I was able to do that via a flow. Let me show you how I did so. But since this session is not about flow, I just want to show you how easy it is to query these configuration records from custom metadata. And then we're going to talk about the benefits of the custom metadata because it has more than that. So this is the flow. If I open it, it's again small flow. It starts with a screen. In the screen, I choose which template that I should select. And this is something called a choice set. This choice set is configured directly to read from the custom metadata records. So here it's a choice set. If we open that configuration of that object, so you can see here, it first of all, the object name is opportunity template. It's exactly another object similar to table 1 that I have configured, but I have created this prior to the session, not to waste your time. And here I choose the ID to be the value, and in the label I show the label field of the custom metadata. If I go quickly here to custom metadata, and this is the actual object that I have configured. So we do have some standard fields in the custom metadata like label, developer name, and so on. And if you check the records here, you will find the full list that I am supposed to configure. And the flow is reading simply from this custom metadata object. Moving forward, this is the second screen that pop up for the user to ask him for the opportunity name, the close date. And here I create the opportunity record. And here I get the record opportunity products. So using a get record option, I query the second custom metadata object. So custom metadata object in the flow, it is exactly dealt as standard object or custom object. You just specify it in a get records step, and you will be able to get all the records, store them in a variable, and that's it. And you can see here a loop. I'm looping here for every record coming from this step in order to insert it in a variable. And this variable is of type opportunity products or opportunity line items. And at the end, I'm inserting this opportunity line items. And with that, we have this record that you just saw. So this is how easy it is to configure such a requirement that was asked by Universal Working Space, co-working space. But as I said, so this was the demo part. Custom metadata has more features than that. First of all, how we deal with custom metadata in Apex. in Apex, you deal with it exactly like any custom object or standard object. You can just write a SQL statement in order to retrieve the fields from a custom metadata. Just one thing, custom metadata end with the suffix __ MDT instead of __ C. So this is something that when you see, you know that, okay, this is a custom metadata object, not a standard object or a custom object, sorry. Another interesting thing is that custom metadata records is cached in the memory of Salesforce org. So it has a good impact on the performance. Salesforce do not actually retrieve that from the database in order to get you the values of the custom metadata. However, it is cached in the application layer. And therefore, do you remember, if we have here a for loop for 101, and you know the limit for Salesforce, you cannot have, first of all, a SQL statement in a for loop, but I'm doing this for test purpose. If you replace this with an account object and you select from here the account name, you're gonna have the famous exception, limits exception 101 reached, because you have more than 100 SQL statements in one transaction. However, for metadata, I can do so very easily, and this will not crash because, as I said, it is cached in the memory. It's not retrieved from the database. Therefore, this limit is not applied for custom metadata. So this is one of the advantages about custom metadata. If you remember custom settings, I said that Salesforce is encouraging using from custom settings to custom metadata. And therefore, if you want, by default now, every org has the list custom settings disabled. And if you want that option, go to schema settings. You will find here an option to enable that. That's why you see the option enabled on my org. So here, manage list custom settings type, but as a best practice, start moving from custom settings towards custom data. Keep only the hierarchical custom settings because it's a unique feature. There is nothing compared to it in other Salesforce features. Another nice thing about custom metadata is that it is deployable. By deployable, I mean most of the objects in Salesforce are deployable. You can configure a custom object and add it to a change set and use that change set to deploy it from a sandbox to a sandbox and later on to the production. But what is new here in the custom metadata is that not only the definition of the custom metadata is deployable, but as well the records. You can add the records of the custom metadata to your change set and deploy them as easy as that. So do you remember here, if I go back to the custom metadata, yeah, these kind of records. You can add these records to the change set, and you can deploy them from a sandbox to a sandbox or to a production instance. So this is a huge advantage for metadata, is that you can easily deploy that records instead of having a post-deployment step to populate your configuration records, because Salesforce know that this is important for your features to work properly. This was a pain point before. If you use custom settings for using to model the business rules, as I said, the VAT or something like this opportunity template, the feature will not work properly unless you load the data. But with that, you can ship the code and the data of the custom metadata together in change set or any other deployment option. This works as well with metadata API and Salesforce DX or Salesforce Developer Experience. If you were confused of what I have said, it was on purpose. I picked 3 similar things: custom settings, custom metadata, custom object, custom permission. But if you are confused, I want you just to memorize what we have here in this slide. This is a summary of what we have said. In a nutshell, let's recap. Custom permission is the mechanism that allow you to assign access via a permission set or a profile to a user. And this is the unique thing about it. You grant it via permission set and you or profile, and you revoke it from the profile and the permission set. So it is handy to maintain, not like the flags on the user record. Custom settings. The advantage on the custom settings is the hierarchical feature. You can have multiple versions of the same data in a hierarchical way. Org defaults, something for a profile or user, and they can override each other. Custom settings is cached like the custom metadata exactly, and as well custom metadata is cached, so it's better for performance. If you're assessing the performance, okay, I have configuration records, should I store them in custom object or one of these? Definitely go to one of these custom settings or custom metadata because it is cached. This will be better for your performance. Deployable, only custom metadata is deployable. The other approaches is not deployable. If you have a custom object, you need to fill that with records via data loader or something similar. It is the records inside the custom object is not deployable. Support validation rules, only custom metadata and custom objects or normal objects have validation rules. So if you want to have validation about your configuration records, pick one of these. Triggers is not supported to custom metadata or custom settings. For this one, it's not applicable at all. So if you want to have triggers over your configuration records, then you cannot use custom settings or custom metadata and therefore use custom objects. The field types that you can add to custom settings and custom metadata is somehow limited. You cannot add their master detail relationships or lookup relationships, and therefore, if you have such requirements, then go for custom object and do not go to custom metadata. And with that said, that was all about today. Thank you for listening.